One build I always return to for roaming in World vs. World on my Mesmer is the Power Mirage with the Greatsword and Sword. And this is because it has so much versatility for 1v1s with constant single target pressure with the sword ambushes. It also has range damage and AoE damage that scales up very well in larger fights. And it's generally got a lot of mobility to escape outnumbered situations. So let's get straight into the build. So I go for full Marauder's gear stats with the Rune of Surging. You want the movement speed because you don't get that anywhere else on a Mirage. And the boon duration is kind of nice because you go for some Might and Fury uptime. For the weapons, go for a Sword and Torch and Greatsword with energy cleansing on both. You need those energy sigils to get your extra dodges, which give you defense and offense because dodging gives you ambushes, and of course cleansing because the domination variant doesn't have much cleansing on it, like at all. So you gotta be really careful around conditions, but the torch gives you a little bit more condition cleanse. However, you can also go for a pistol. So if you want to go for pistol, which I kind of prefer the pistol playstyle because it has more single target CC to set up your combos and a little bit more damage, whereas the torch is mostly for the stealth. So if you want to go for the pistol, what you're going to need to do is change your relic from Relic of the Adventurer. What this does is it gives you an extra dodge whenever you use your heal skill, but whenever you use the pistol, you want to take the pistol trait, and that means that you can't go for mental gymnastics. So with Torch, you've already got your vigor, and therefore on the pistol, you're going to need your vigor from the Relic of the Evasion. So we go for evasion and the pistol trait with the pistol. And then the torch is going to be mental gymnastics and the Relic of the Adventurer. The traits I take are dueling and domination. Obviously, you want to change these two traits depending on which weapon you want, but I also go for the sword trait because it's a little bit more damage and cooldown reduction on sword, which is one of my favorite weapons to use with this build. You stay on it very often in some situations, so the extra cooldown reduction is pretty relevant in those situations, but you can go for some extra projectile reflect, but it's not really too relevant, I find. Or you can maybe go for blind if you're going for 1v1s, but I just go for the sword trait. And then deceptive evasion gives you a clone whenever you dodge. This is really important because having clones allows you to get extra value on your ambushes because of the infinite horizon trait, which makes your clones use their ambushes. And your ambushes on the sword are going to be dazes. Essentially, you'll leap at the target and you can daze, which can also interrupt, and interrupt can trigger power block. And power block is really powerful because it does extra damage, applies weakness, and increases their cooldowns. So with all of your clones using their ambushes at the target, you can often trigger power block with those clones, which will also give you, by the way, daze also gives vulnerability. So a lot of extra damage and basically lockdown on the target due to the sword ambush clones. And then we've also got the greatsword trait and the shattered concentration. So our shatters are going to give us boon removal, which is really important to get out our enemy stability so that we can actually interrupt them, or protection so that we can burst them. In Mirage, we just go for a little bit of extra regeneration because we don't have much condition cleanse. And then Desert Distortion is extremely powerful because it makes distortion our strongest ability. Whenever you distort, you can use ambushes, and also your distorted clones become Mirage Mirrors, which you can pick up to then also get dodges and ambush from. So distortion is like a huge swing in momentum when you use it, so you always want to do it with 3 clones. Luckily, we have tons of clone generation whenever we dodge, so that is pretty reliable to do. Now, the general skill priority is going to be to create clones, then you're going to want to dodge, to ambush, and then you want to shatter those clones, and then repeat by creating more clones, dodge, ambush, and then shatter. So there's 2 ways we can do that, with the sword and with the greatsword. Generally on the sword, you're going to be in like kind of melee-ish range. Start with the sword 3, create a clone, immobilize and port in, and then you're going to immediately dodge, and then use the 1 skill to ambush. This will cause your clones to also do their ambushes, which will put a bunch of vulnerability on the target because it dazes, and they're immobilized plus daze, which is basically a stun. And then from there, you can use your sword 2. You've got 3 clones, right? Because you use sword 3, which is a clone. You dodge, which is a clone. And actually, your Mirage Thrust is also creating a clone. So that's 3 clones right there. And you can immediately use your F1 Shatter from that. So let's just show that off. So we do 3, dodge, and then F1. And that's pretty much the basic combo. You can also precast your Phantasmal Mage whenever, but it's not the most reliable skill to use on moving targets because it's so slow. And of course, your Torch 4 is mostly going to be used for either disengaging or to get like a stealth opener. But it's kind of predictable when someone goes in stealth, so I generally just use it to fill time between my combos. So that's the sword rotation, but you can also do Greatsword. And the Greatsword has the 2 skill and the 4 skill, which will create 3 clones in total. And then from there you can dodge, and your Greatsword Ambush, the 1 skill, is a triple beam. And these beams pierce the targets. So if it hits basically 2 targets in a line, it will hit them basically twice. And so this target here is going to get blasted with 3 beams. And that gives them 25 stacks of vulnerability and you 25 stacks of might. So what we want to do is basically ambush so that we get all those might stacks and vulnerability stacks. And then we want to go in for like Shatter Burst while we've got all that damage ready. So your F1, or we could go in with the sword right at that point and then use our F1 to shatter. So that's kind of like the basic rotation. It gets a little bit more complicated than that though in a real situation, because you need to use your dodges to actually dodge skills. So one mechanic that you really need to get good at is the timing of your dodges for kiting. And that's because essentially whenever you use a dodge, you can ambush after, but when you swap to your sword, you're going to get an energy sigil trigger, right? So often you're going to be sitting here with your greatsword out, you're going to be using your ambushes, and maybe you don't want to use your dodges too much, or you've just used your heal and now you've got a lot of dodges, but you want to now start kiting with your sword. So if I immediately swap to my sword right now, I've got full endurance, and that means I will waste the energy sigil because I'll overcap the endurance. So I want to dodge, swap weapon, detarget, and then about face or something using, you know, our left click. So what I'm going to do is dodge, left click, turn around, swap weapon, and then use the 1 skill to leap like that. So a lot of button presses in a small window of time to get that kind of mechanic or maneuver off. But that's really important that you detarget right, obviously, because you don't want to leap in. So we want to be detargeting, dodging, and then using the 1 skill to get away. And also with the weapon swap beforehand if you're just swapping from the greatsword. So if we want to show that again without having me kind of like flail through it because I'm trying to explain it, it would look kind of like this. So we're using our heal skill to get some more stuff, and then we're going to dodge, detarget, and leap away after the swap. So yeah, that's going to allow you to basically use 3 leaps away because we get the extra energy sigil, and then we're at full and we can double dodge, and you can even use your 4 skill to go in stealth, and that allows you to kind of like reposition while you're in stealth. They don't know which way you're going, and then you leap away, and by the time they know where you are because you came out of stealth, you're too far away for them to catch up. Now I also take the sand through glass utility because this is an immobilize removal spell, and if you're immobilized you cannot dodge as a Mirage. So you can get easily killed if you get immobilized, and this is like the counter to that to essentially allow you to use your dodges, but it also gives you an extra dodge after it. So it's a double dodge in a way, which allows you to also ambush. So you can do that same kind of idea and then do the about face, detarget, and leap away. Now we've also got Signet of Illusions, which will recharge our distortion. So we can make huge plays with distortion. So let's show off getting a bunch of clones here. And now I'm going to distort and swap to my greatsword. I'm going to create clones again, and then I'm going to pick up the Mirage Mirrors because the Mirage Mirrors will allow my clones to ambush as well. And I've just distorted, which means I lost all my clones, but I created them again immediately. And now I can use Signet of Illusions to get my distortion again. and then I want to create clones right after distorting, dodging also, and then you can see here I'm going to pick up one mirror, do some damage, and then do another skill because there's a little bit of a delay before you can ambush again. So you want to kind of time that where you dodge, ambush, use another skill, then you'll dodge, ambush again. And yeah, you get a lot of dodges, and we'll be showing how that works in a real situation now. So here's a situation where we're going against a group of players that have a lot of support. They've got 2 Tempest healers. So I need to do a lot of pressure with my Greatsword ambushes to be able to pressure out their cooldowns and then secure kills. So we've got it down here. I immediately want to use my Greatsword ambush when they go to revive them because I've got extra cleave damage whenever they're next to those targets, right? Because it'll pierce them with the ambush. So I immediately go in with my Jaunt elite skill and Greatsword 2 into 3 combo and then F1 to do a pretty decent shatter burst there. They get revived though because they have the glyph, I believe, but we get them down again, and I try to position myself so that I can get more ambushes off, which will pierce and cleave. They're reviving more, so we're kind of in a bad spot here. We're running out of cooldowns, so I'm gonna need to get out. I can use my Torch 4 to re-engage again, but I'm just gonna use my heal skill, back off, wait for cooldowns and a better situation to be able to see the next kill. They did use both of their glyphs, right? Because they got those 2 reses off without actually hand resing. So we can potentially get this next kill if we get another down. So we're just gonna, I've rotated into my Signet of Illusions already, so I'm kind of low on cooldowns, but I do have a distortion left, and I can just spam my dodges for more ambushes. So a good target here is obviously the Tempest, because we know that they're pretty low on cooldowns. There's a Mist form, but we maybe can go for the Reaper. They had a Reaper down earlier, and I'm just gonna spam AoE until I can see a good target. I see the Reaper now, and we can go for that, but this Tempest is actually lower, so we go for the cleave on them with the ambushes, and we're just gonna keep spamming. I'm gonna actually use my Sand Through Glass here, which is a little bit aggressive using my defensive cooldowns, but since they're so low, we're going for it. And here I go for another shatter combo, so I've got all 3 clones up and all of my dodges are out. So at this point I don't get too much more value from ambushing, so now is when I want to shatter, and I actually use the distortion there as well to just get an extra ambush if possible. Even though it was a 0 clone distortion, I wanted to use the F1 to get the extra burst, whereas distortion is a lot more sustained than bursty. The F1 is obviously more burst. And now that I'm pretty much out of all cooldowns, I'm just going to use my blink to get out, reset, and we can finish off these kills after we get a quick little heal from going out of combat. Now here's a 1v1 with a Celestial Mirage. I need to avoid getting interrupted here because they also are running Power Block, which means I need to rotate through my dodges very cleanly and use my distortion and my Signet of Illusions timing very perfectly, because if I run out of cooldowns too fast, I will not be able to have enough steam to finish them. So there's a distortion already, and now I'm just using as many ambushes as possible. They go in stealth, so I'm just picking up those Mirage Mirrors, and I blink through them so that I can use my Greatsword 4 without getting interrupted by the dazes, and I blink away so that I can Signet of Illusions without getting interrupted. That's my second distortion right there, and I'm just going to ambush because I've got the distortion still. I've got a dodge here, and I'm going to use my Jaunt to get into those Mirage Mirrors to be able to keep using my ambushes and dodges in a very clean rotation, and that's going to allow me to actually keep up the pressure long enough to finish them, even though I'm pretty much out of cooldowns now. Here's a 1v1 against a Celestial Signet Mirage. One of the more powerful builds for 1v1s. And I'm going to open with my sword ambushes because those are pretty good for dazing, getting out their initial cooldowns and stun breaks. And then I'm going to swap to the Greatsword. I get a nice interrupt there, which gets them pretty low from the power block. I'm going to try to keep using my ambushes to keep pressuring them. I use the 2 skill, which is unblockable, by the way. So when they're blocking like this, I can actually hit them with the 2 skill. And they blink away, so I try to follow and be aggressive because I've got the advantage right now. They're below half health, and I'm trying to finish the kill, because this build is going to lose the longer the fight goes on. So if I can't secure the kill, I'm losing. So I need to be very aggressive, but I want to kind of like rotate through my cooldowns and kite in between them. So we're going to use our Greatsword Burst here. I'm going to dodge this Dragon's Tooth. I use my Greatsword 5 to the wall, but they don't get hit with it because they have stability. I'm using the Sword Ambush here to get some dazes, but the actual hitbox of the Sword Ambush is so small that you have to be really precise with it, and it'll just miss a lot of times when you're standing next to the target, because like you'll just kind of just stand in place. So a lot of times you want to use that Sword Ambush at range because it ends up having better like tracking on the target. But anyways, we're just trying to keep pressuring the target, get that Greatsword 5 again to interrupt them. And the torch is not the best for securing kills. Obviously the pistol's better, but I was just using the torch in this situation. Also got a really good sword amount of damage there from using the auto attack chain. I just ate all of the Mirage Mirrors there, which was a little bit low value, but I was just trying to get as much pressure as I could. Getting a little bit of poke damage on my Greatsword. They go into their block, so I'm waiting. I use my Greatsword 5 early, which is going to prevent me from getting a lot of pressure, because I keep getting a lot of pressure when I CC them. And I use my dodges and my stealth to kind of kite away. They are very low health still for a while, but they're sustaining through it. I need to use my Torch 5 here. I'm going to go for the ambush. See, the Sword Ambush has very bad tracking again, so I lose a lot of pressure when it just doesn't, they don't even dodge it, they just use positioning to get out. I get stunned really long there, so I use my blink. I've got my distort here soon, so I'm going to use that, and now I can use all of those Mirage Mirrors with the clones to keep up the pressure. And unfortunately I kind of waste that mirror because I had to leap through it. I jaunt over to get this Mirage Mirror so I can evade that Dragon's Tooth. And we're going to go for the leap there. That time it would have landed if I didn't get dazed. We get a good daze there though on the second. And I just used my Signet of Illusions to distort again. So I'm pretty much out of cooldowns here. We really need to finish it. And I get hit with the Dragon's Tooth, so I'm pretty low. I need to finish them. They're kind of low too, but they've been that low for a while now. I get off my heal at the last second and I swap for some cleanse. Go into stealth for some more cleanse. And now I'm going to go over here. Use my Torch 5, Greatsword 4, and I'm going to push them back when they get close to me, which is nice, but we didn't get the power block, and they're just going to finish me off with some auto attacks on their fire. So as you can see, the build does pretty well when you can end the fight early, because you don't have much sustain, but you do have a lot of burst. So you got to play aggressively, and if you can't secure that kill, you need to get out and disengage. But that was a 1v1 that I obviously couldn't disengage, so in that situation I'll obviously die. But if you like this kind of content, then please like the video, subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next expansion. The era of being a Mesmer main is sadly over.